Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Horror Countdown podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and thank you so much for joining me here tonight. So, what I wanted to do here is I wanted to take the time and give you just a brief little introduction episode to what the rest of the podcast is going to be about. Just basically introduce myself and, kind of lay a little foundation and grounding for what's going to happen and, where I'm going to take the show and all that kind of stuff. So, if you've been following the show previously on social media or, me and, my other previous shows and stuff like that, you know that the show is basically going to be a countdown show, as the title suggests. It's basically going to be a top 10 show where I gather a guest, we come up with a topic, and do a top 10 countdown on it. And, we're going to change themes up. We're going to do different themes. We're going to do different topics. We're going to, sometimes do variations on the same topic. I can't say for, what we've got coming up, but we're going to have, we're probably going to be doing various slashers that are going to be maybe somewhat similar lists, or have various werewolf films, or do, we're going to do like a whole bunch of different things. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to where we're going to take this and all the various different topics and guests that I have, that are going to come on and talk to me about this. So that's the general gist of the show, where we're going to start off with. Basically, it's, going to be releasing soon. We're going to have a couple of episodes to get you going. So, what we're going to be doing on the show, in that's going to be the general setup. But what we're also going to be doing is we're going to do franchise retrospectives. We're going to do director retrospectives. Top 10, director feat countdowns, top 10, franchises, all that kind of good stuff. Decades, year end lists, all sorts of things. Basically, what we're, you know, it's all going to be with me and a different guest. So, I'm always welcome to have somebody else come on. As long as you come up with a fun topic, I'm interested. So, with that out of the way, like I said, this is the first episode. Although, if you've noticed on your players right now, you notice that this isn't episode one. This is episode zero. And the reason for that is that I don't consider this an actual countdown. We're not doing that on, this episode here. We're going to be just doing a, brief little introduction on me, get a little background on where I come from, all my different. I'm not going to go too deep into everything. I'm definitely interested, but we'll talk about that at a later time. I just wanted to get a brief little intro on where I am, where I, came from as a horror fan, why I'm doing this now, those kinds of questions. And maybe I'll give you a little top 10 just as a little sneak preview, but I'll think about that for later on. So, for those that are kind of new to me and my circle and are just, interested in where I come from, I can't say that I follow a lot of traditional genre paths. I'm not the kind of person that was the usual path into being a horror fan that I assume most horror fans have growing up. I wasn't raised around horror films. My parents are adamantly against them. They never were fans. They always hated the idea of just films about people killing each other and just, being cruel and vicious and, not only, the human stuff, but all the, like, werewolves and vampires just ripping people to pieces and, ghosts just trying to kill people and all of that, what I assume a lot of people like actually about it. A lot of it was sort of not necessarily turned off, but just not given a whole lot of positive reinforcement as to me wanting to get into it. But unfortunately, I was always at the age where none of that was ever really it never really attracted me to it. It was actually more of a reinforcement as to why I shouldn't be doing it, because I unfortunately grew up with parents that were not they weren't strict or anything, but they were always just on me about where I, being a good person, being, a kind and generous, kid and thoughtful and respectful and stuff like that. So it was always considered more of a it was more like kind of like a gray area, especially when I started watching films in general, about watching films that were specifically about killing people and torturing them and mutilating them and splaying their guts all over the place and all that good stuff. So when I grew up, it was always kind of, you wanted to be family friendly and you wanted to have that kind of engagement with the films that I was watching. So horror films and like really kind of like violent action films or sci-fi or all of any of those kinds of things were frowned upon, but they were never really like exclusively like I couldn't do anything about it. They were just I didn't have any interest in them. They never appealed to me, so I never really got any urge to get into them. And it wasn't until I was pretty much right around my teens, like 13, 14 ish, and I started realizing, I'd been watching movies for a while. None of it was affecting me. I wasn't, turning out to be a psychopath. I wasn't becoming this, kind of. I guess I'm trying to say, like, I wasn't, the kind of person that they were warning me that I was going to turn into. I was still, the same kind of, thoughtful, generous, and kind person that they had raised me to be. I just was starting to get more and more interested in violence and gore and all of the, more over the top and extreme stuff. So I started searching horror out and I started getting into trying to check the films out and seeing what they were about. And that was really kind of where I developed an interest in the genre. And from watching, some of the earlier stuff, I remember specifically watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre as like the first legitimate horror film I ever saw. That was, I can't say it was a fun experience, but it was one that it was kind of like gave me an idea of what horror was about. And then, watching, other kind of stuff like, Friday the 13th and Halloween and Scream and Candyman and some of like the other films that were coming out in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it started making more and more sense and making me feel more at ease with watching horror films and, going deeper into the underground and watching, like the more violence and extreme exploitation kind of stuff that I kind of enjoy now. So it to me, I've always said that I kind of developed into a horror fan simply as a way of testing my tolerance for the subject matter accidentally, and then finding good films and then backtracking to saying, okay, let's check out what this is about. And from there, that turned me into a horror fan, the kind of horror fan that I am today. Where, for those that don't know me, I will legitimately watch anything, and I mean I will legitimately watch anything. I've seen everything from what could be considered snuff films to full-on torture porn, gore, sleazy exploitation, Nazi exploitation, nun exploitation, cannibal films, in all the, over the top violent gore films, from the 70s and 80s. But then I'm also a huge fan of schlock and cheese and just, goofy, silly sci-fi channel originals. Like, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a massive Sharknado fan. So don't be surprised if they pop up sooner rather than later on one of these shows. Um, I love Italian horror. I'm a huge, massive fan of giallos and zombie films, and a lot of their murder mysteries, and all kinds of other genre fare like Fulci and Argento and Lenzi and Martino and various other directors and movements and scenes that came out of Europe and like in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, Mario Bava, just because I forgot to mention him, but his work as well. Even working as I do as a writer for a website known as Asian Movie Pulse. I've developed a very big interest and fascination with Asian cinema and seeing a lot of what goes on over there, from a lot of the wild and over the top Japanese splatter comedies to Hong Kong possession films and hopping vampires and Filipino creature features and all kinds of just, you know, Taiwanese and South Korean ghost films and just all sorts of various films from like around the world and various different time places and stuff like that. So uh, like I say, I legitimately say that I do watch anything. I don't necessarily have anything that I would consider as like a go-to per se. Just basically, as long as it looks fun, I have the means to get to it, and it's something that I can actually acquire. I'm usually invested, but I don't necessarily have anything in terms of like a go-to thing that would basically, like occupy all of my time. So, I'm down for anything. I'm interested in just about everything that the genre has to offer. There's very little that would turn me off. There's still a few films that I do feel kind of not necessarily against watching, but they're those that I kind of just have to be just like in the strictest mood, like, all right, I've got to watch this, I have to do this, there's no other way around it, sort of just bite the bullet and do it kind of a mentality. So, yeah, I don't necessarily have a lot of waking interest in exploitation or the jungle cannibal films as like a recreational thing, even though I do like them. But basically, I do enjoy indie films. I do enjoy, watching theatrical stuff. I do enjoy watching, stuff made in your backyard. I do watch it, and I will legitimately give it an honest chance, which I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that would really say that, but I'm one of them. That is me, and that's basically who I am as like a genre fan. Like, I do love everything. I do give everything an honest, legitimate chance. Some work better for me than others. A lot of times I'm basically interested in it just because I like the style and the approach of it. So, like I said, I'm a huge sci-fi fan. Any killer shark movie or cheesy creature feature, sign me up. My interest in Italian horror basically gives me free reign to watch, any giallo, any, European crime film, or any of those kind of just under the radar genre films that you can't necessarily pinpoint or pigeonhole into anything, but there's, there's just something about them that I can watch and just enjoy, anytime. But I don't want to get too rambling here. I kind of feel like even though this is still like the first episode, I'm still kind of like finding my footing with this. So I'm basically just going to, cap it there. And if you have any questions or anything like that, shoot me a message. I'm happy to answer anything. Respond either on the show or privately if ever you want to do that. But I think that should be a pretty good idea of where I am in my mentality when it comes to these kind of films. So for the rest of the episode, I figure I'll just give you a brief little top 10 nuggets, a brief little like condensed version of my top 10. Even though this isn't an official episode, we'll still do a countdown, top 10 of sorts, which is my top 10 favorite films of all time. I'm not going to go too in depth with them. There is a plan that I have, which may involve talking about these at some point sooner rather than later, but we'll just play that by ear and hopefully things will work out. But as of right now, I figure we'll go ahead and do a brief countdown. So at number 10, these are, like I said, my favorite all time films ever made. Horror specifically, of course. Number 10 is Torso from Sergio Martino. Basically, a schoolgirl is killed in front of a. And that she's not killed in front of, but she's basically killed by a masked assailant. And her best friends are worried that the killer's gonna strike them next, so they head off to a mountainside retreat out from the countryside to forget their troubles and basically let the police handle what's going on. It's just like a small little break from their studies, only to realize that the killer has followed them there and is basically taking them out one by one. An absolutely fantastic giallo. I love everything about what this does. Fantastic kills, absolutely impeccable atmosphere, a great setup, a slasher aesthetic to a lot of the stalking scenes. I basically consider it an intermediate point between giallo and slasher. So if you can pick it up, definitely do so. It is fantastic. Number 9 is Mario Bava's Black Sunday. So in this one, a woman is sentenced to death for being a witch, and hundreds of years later, she is reincarnated as a spirit that is bent on wreaking havoc on the descendants of the people who who originally killed her, which includes possessing her ancestral spirit. Not her her spirit possesses the ancestor that is a carbon copy identical twin of hers with different color hair. Absolutely fantastic gothic horror. I cannot stress enough how good this movie looks. Flawless visuals, just a chilling atmosphere, fantastic plot, tons of fun, great, just European gothic sensibilities, and Mario Bava, Barbara Steele, just fantastic work. I absolutely love it. Number 8 is probably one that I'm not going to spend too much time on. I figure most of you should know this one, especially if you're listening to the show. Evil Dead, the original version, the 1981 or 82 version. I'm still one of those where I still don't know the actual year of release. I've always just said 81 just because that's sort of what Sam Raimi tends to go by. But anyways, for the few of you that don't know, a group of teens head out to a cabin in the woods just to party and relax and have fun for a weekend, and inadvertently find a book that summons spirits from this ancient realm and just possesses and terrorizes them one by one. I mean, what can be said about this? Just a absolutely fantastic film. Tons of atmosphere, tons of dread. Some of the few jump scares that still work on me to this day. I absolutely love this film. I know that a lot of people tend to prefer the others in the series, but I love the ferocity and the viciousness of the original. It works on me on so many levels, and I'm just a massive fan of that film. All right, number 7 is a kind of an oddball choice, but it works for me. It is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. I love this movie. It is just bonkers, bizarre, over the top fun. Tons of gore, great zombie work. If you haven't seen it, it concerns a young man who lives in 1957 or 58. I don't remember the exact year, but late 1950s New Zealand, and he discovers that his mother has contracted this virus from a rat, this rat monkey found in a remote island in the South Pacific from a local zoo, and is basically turning into this ravenous monstrous zombie that infects everyone that she comes into contact with. And he has to try to keep her from getting out into the community and wreaking havoc while dealing with this relationship that he's trying to start with this young woman who's become infatuated with him. Just goofy, bizarre. Uh, this film is just hysterical. I laugh continuously at this. It's so much fun. It's so gory and over the top. I absolutely cannot say enough good things about this one. It's so much fun. And number six is Dario Argento's Suspiria. And I have to keep reminding myself to do that because of the remake from a few years ago. But I just adore the original. For if you've seen the remake but aren't aware of the original, they're pretty similar. Basically, a dancer is given a chance to study at a prestigious school in Europe. I think the original switch locations. The original, it's a academy in Germany. In the remake, I think it's Italy, but don't quote me on that because I'm not a huge fan of the original, of the remake, so I don't know a lot of the details. But she goes to arrive at the school and basically begins to suspect that the teachers and other students there are practitioners of witchcraft and has to, stay alive basically. Uh, I will admit this one took me a while to warm up to, but I am so glad I did. Just fantastic fever dream logic. Yes, nothing makes sense, but it doesn't. It's not supposed to. It's supernatural. It's witchcraft. They're not bound by the laws of normal physics. And as soon as I realized that, the film worked for me. And there's some fantastic setups here. There's absolutely brutal death scenes, tons of atmosphere, and the style in this is absolutely amazing. Just everything on here looks like a painting just come to life, and I'm not usually that kind of a person, but it works for me, and it's a film that grows on me on repeat viewing. So number six would be Suspiria from Dario Argento. Number five is John Carpenter's version of The Thing. Again, another film that I kind of feel kind of disgusted about saying which version it is, but I know a lot of people would probably have assumed which one I meant just by saying The Thing, but Carpenter's version, it just fantastic. Basically, a research team in the Antarctic discovers a strange craft inside of this block of ice from a nearby research center that is absolutely devastated, and bring it back to them to their base where they realize that the beast inside the craft is a mutation that is an alien mutation that assimilates other life forms into copies of it, into assimilates them itself into other copies and wreaks havoc throughout the facility. Just fantastic. The dread and the sense of paranoia in this is just jaw dropping. The special effects work to show all the various transformations and mutations and alien beings in here just absolutely immaculate. I just cannot get enough of that stuff. One of the best jump scares ever in the history of mankind, and the finale is just the perfect way to conclude this. I love the way it ends. It's so much better than what it should be recognized as, and I absolutely love the film. So, number five is The Thing. Number four would be Reanimator. Another film that I don't know if a lot of people would really know. I know a lot of people would know it, but it's kind of an oddball choice, I suspect. So basically, two scientists at a research facility decide to start playing around with one of them. One of the doctors has developed this formula that enables him to reanimate dead, and basically they start playing around with it, and a zombie outbreak occurs, and things get wild from there. This is just so much fun. The epitome of just a good time. you can take it seriously. You can, just have fun with the setups and the outrageous scenarios that are presented here. But it's a fun time all around. Again, the gore is amazing. There's just a ton of practical effects in here that are fantastic, and the way that it develops from seeing their relationship unfold the way it does is just a ton of fun, and I have so much. It's so much fun, and I love the film. One of my favorite discoveries of the past few years, because it took me a while actually to realize the film, and found it for sale on Arrow Video for one of their Black Friday bargain sales, and I am so glad I discovered this, because this was a recent discovery a few years ago, and it wowed me this much that it's number four for me all time. So number three is another unconventional pick. I suspect the remaining three are, but number three is Tenebrae from Dario Argento. So in this one, a mystery writer is brought to Italy to promote his latest book, which just so happens to coincide with a string of murders that are being committed based on the killings in his latest novel. And he and his detective try to figure out the identity of the killer before it's too late, and he strikes everybody around him. Again, another sort of slasher giallo hybrid, although this one is decidedly more of a giallo. Giallos, for those that don't know, are Italian murder mysteries that they've forged into slasher films. There's a lot of influence taken from both parties, and they're basically really similar, especially giallo films in the 70s. That they started developing a lot more of like a body count kind of an approach, where a mystery is set up, and then strangely you wanted to discover the identity of the killer before they attacked and killed everyone around them. So you have a fantastic setup already here with the novelist and the way that he gets involved into the ongoing investigation. Just absolutely fantastic stalking scenes here. Some of the most brutal kills in the genre. I love this film. A fantastic twist at the end, even that kind of takes you by surprise the first time. I love this movie. I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the first giallos I would recommend people to watch. Like I said, the slasher aesthetic kind of gives it a little easier leeway to get into, but by and large, this is a great first entry, and one that I really recommend a lot of people would have a great time with. Number two, like I said, kind of an unconventional choice, but Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. Um, I know that this is kind of a little more of an out there choice for some people, but basically, a woman arrives at a hotel in New Orleans when she discovers that she has inherited the hotel from her family. Her mother has just recently deceased, and she's now the new owner. And she decides to start renovating it. But unfortunately, a series of calamities on the various crew members and workers that she's hired sort of prompt her into looking into the history of what happened there, and all sorts of occult happening, all sorts of, like, rituals and sacrifices and murders and all sorts of stuff that happened at the hotel in the past has basically allowed it to become a portal to hell. And eventually transpires that there's a zombie plague unleashed upon the land. So kind of a various mishmash of genres. You have supernatural, you have occult, you have there's tendencies towards a haunted house film at the very beginning, and then the finale is a full-on zombie massacre. And this is just an absolute blast. The style in this is just immaculate. The sense of tension and dread throughout here is just amazing. There's some of the best set pieces I've ever seen in this kind of a genre. the haunted house approach allows it to be just immensely chilling and creepy in the first half, and then you switch gears and it becomes this investigative occult mystery kind of an approach in the middle, and then you're taken into this zombie massacre in this hospital at the end, and gore's flying all over the place. There's just tons of tension and suspense, and it's an amazing film. I really recommend people try to watch it. It's definitely worthwhile and one of the most underrated films I've ever seen. I really cannot recommend it enough. However, the one that I would probably recommend the most is, number one, my all-time favorite film, which is another Lucio Fulci film, but this one is Zombie, or as some would probably know it, Zombie 2. And this one, a woman basically looking for a sign of contact from her missing father ends up discovering that he was last seen on the small island in the Caribbean and enlists a reporter to help her track him down, where they eventually stumble upon another couple in the area to the other couple in the area that are on vacation, and they all come together to find out that the island where the father was missing is home of a scientist who's looking to cure a voodoo outbreak that has ravaged the island and has basically allowed the dead to come back to life. I know it's a lot more simplistic than that kind of convoluted setup, but it is just amazing. I fell in love with this the first time I saw it, and it still holds me to this day. Again, much like with Beyond, just an immaculate atmosphere here. Just the wet Caribbean, the sense of dread and paranoia that emerges when they realize that things are getting out of hand and there's no way out. Just amazing gore. Some of the best, most juiciest kills ever. Absolutely fantastic zombie makeup. I would probably venture to say that these are the best looking zombies ever created on screen. Tons of action, an amazing score. Everything about this movie just works for me. An amazing ending, an amazing setup. This movie just is amazing, and I cannot get enough of it. I used to watch it religiously every year for several years until I wore my copy out, and it took me a while to replace it. But yeah, this movie is just fantastic. I absolutely adore the movie, and I absolutely hope more people get to watch it because it is my like I said, my personal favorite horror film of all time. So I guess that would kind of wrap up where we're at for to now. Like I said, I just wanted to do a brief little intro about me, do a little intro about the show and where we're going, and give you a little something about me. So yeah, I guess that'll be it for now. If you want, stay tuned. We're going to be releasing the true episodes. I should say episode one, which you should be able to find pretty soon. Or if you're hearing this after I release it, check out the rest of the episodes, I guess. Subscribe to the show on all various catchers or podcast apps of your choice, and see where the journey takes us. So for that, we'll turn off, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for letting me ramble as much as I have. This is easily the longest I've ever talked on one of these kinds of shows without interrupting myself. So thank you for that. You can check out all of our various social media links. All of them are in the description below, but for those of you wondering, there's a Facebook page for the show, Horror Countdown Pod. We also have a group that you can come in and join. You're free to post whatever you want as long as it remains horror, and everybody's treated the same way. Be kind, be courteous, be respectful, all that kind of thing. You can find us on Twitter. There's a Twitter for the show called Horror Countdown, which is, like I said, linked below. And I haven't gone through the trouble of setting up an Instagram. I don't know if the show really needs it, so I'm just posting on my own Instagram feed. Don and Ellie, one word on Instagram. You should find it pretty easily. But yeah, we'll wrap up everything for now. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time with a new list for you all to check out because it's not about who's right or wrong. It's not about changing your opinions. It's about celebrating our love of the genre and counting them off one selection at a time. Good night.